Anybody else?
Well, to show Shvat with me, the message that he's not. Right, so
Hemshech Samech Vav, new mimer, Divrei Maskel Ki Kasher Shamayim Achadashim ve'Aretz Achadasha,
page
Kuf Mem Vav, Samech Vav.
Today's what's today?
Oh, today is Kuf.
Kuf Aleph. Kuf.
Kuf.
Kuf
Shvat.
Yeah.
Sorry.
B'siyata d'shmaya Shabbos Pasha va'eiro Rosh Chodesh Shvat Samech Vav Ki kasher hashamayim achadoshim והאורץ החדושו אשר אני אוצא עומדים לפני כך יעמד זרעכם ושמכם. That's a famous posik because it's the second last posik. Second last posik in the whole of the Nevuos Yeshaya. And it occurs right at the siyum of the Torah, which is read whenever Shabbos falls out Rosh Chodesh. That's why it occurs here, because this was a Shabbos, but Rosh Chodesh occurred on the Shabbos. So this is the well-known Shabbos Dika Haftorah of the Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Dika Haftorah. Which also begins with Hashemayim Kisiva Ha'oretz Hadeim Ragloi. Begins also with Hashemayim Ha'oretz, and it completes with that Nevuah on the part of Yeshaya Novi. And he says that Kasher Hashemayim Ha'oretz Ha'chadosha Asher Ani Oiseh. The whole of that Nevuah, and particularly the last section of it, deal entirely with the Gula Amitis Vashlema taken from Yad. What's going to be the situation Bisman Iskalas Hamashiach and L'Divrei HaRadak and other Meforshim over there, also referring to this man Tchias HaMesim, not just the Gula. So the Novi says that just like Kasher, the new heavens and the new earth which I'm going to make, Asher Ani Oseh, Ein Lefanai, they will be standing in front of me, literally. Ein Yamid Zarachem V'Shimachem, so they will stand your seed, your generations, and your name, referring to the Yidden. That your offspring, literally, and your name will stand in front of me in the same way that the new heavens and the new earth, which I intend making, will stand in front of me. Now, there's another posik which follows that, which at the whole Nevuah of Yeshaya finishes, which is rather slightly mind-boggling or frightening posik, which refers to, according to Rashi and the Radak and other great early Rishonim, or early Meforshim agree that it's referring to all the leftovers that will be left over from the two great Goysha mites or powers which will descend on Yerushalayim prior to the actual coming of Geula. Well, that's the Milchemes Goygu or Mogeg, and they'll be left behind a tremendous, what you might call leftovers of those armies and those mites that are going to try and descend on Eretz HaKodesh and try and cause the Yidden to go into Golos again, etc. Drive them out of Eretz Yisrael. It's unfortunately you have to come onto the Goyim nowadays. Anyway, even though it sounds funny, certainly not. But maybe we can smile by way of Utu Eitz Sufa. Dabu Dollar Yok. Maybe we can smile cynically in that regard. However, suffice it to say that the Eibishter promises that people will go out and they'll see the ruins of all these. And then the minhag is, when we read the Haftarah in the Beis Knesset on Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, that we repeat this pasuk again. In other words, you always finish off on something good. Therefore, we read that pasuk over again. And it occurs in a few places where we do that, where we finish off with something which is slightly boggling and disturbing or negative, the way we understand negative, then we read it over again, a positive thing to finish off. So this pasuk is in effect the last pasuk we read on the Haftarah, but we repeat it again after having said that pasuk, which is not so thrilling. Then we repeat this pasuk again. Comes along. The truth is that this Shamayim Va'oretz HaChadoshim is mentioned in the previous chapter in Yeshaya Novi. He writes over there that towards the Geula he's going to make a Shamayim Va'oretz HaChadoshim. So this one, Ki Kasher Shamayim Va'oretz Shamayim HaChadoshim Va'oretz HaChadosha. In a way, we can assume that's referring back to the Shamayim Va'oretz HaChadoshim that he already mentioned in the earlier chapter. And therefore Rashi doesn't say anything about it over here. On this particular part, Rashi doesn't comment on the Shamayim Va'oretz HaChadoshim. And he doesn't really comment much about Yamai Zarach. He refers to the rather negative pasuk about the whole leftovers of Gog and Magog and the whole thing. Basically, Rashi assumes that we've already been told about the Shamayim Va'oretz HaChadoshim in the previous chapter. So there's a difference of opinion amongst the great early commentators as to what does it mean Shamayim Va'oretz Chadoshim, Shamayim Chadoshim Va'oretz Chadosha. Simple terms, that means it's going to be new heavens and new earth, and the Eib's going to make them. And that's what we're going to ask. What's the chiddush in that? That he's going to make them. I mean, obviously, if he's not going to make them, then who? But what does it mean Shamayim Va'oretz Chadoshim? So the Radak learns clearly, and so do some of the other Rishonim, and it's Mashma. Also in Rashi, even though in the second pshat, Rashi learns that this is going to be Mamish Shamayim Va'oretz Chadoshim. Because in the first pshat, Rashi learns over there in the previous chapter that the Eibishter will change literally what's called the Sorim, Ha'alyonim. It's well known. All the different countries of the world, different areas of the earth, have these Bochim, Alyenim, Lamala, which are called their ministers, their Sorim. So the first pshat of Rashi learns is that the Eibshter will change these Sorim. He will alter these angels, and they'll be, as it were, greater and much more chesedic angels, and therefore everything will be with great shefa in the Shamayim Va'oretz, in a new way, in a renewed way, as you might say. Although not that there's some Shamayim Va'oretz that we have in front of us will actually alter. And then in the second pshat, Rashi says that we could suggest that the Eib's is going to make new heavens and new earth altogether. They're going to be completely renewed in the sense that these will, as it were, be withdrawn, and the Eib's will make in such a way that all the way that they function and their whole form of giving forth everything they're supposed to give forth, and everything that will be in them will be much greater and different than it is now, even though it will still be in a form of Shamayim Va'oretz. Mashenkin, the Radak and other, as I say, it's Mashma, in other great Mefoshim, they learn that the Eib's is not going to make new heavens and new earth, but why they called Shamayim Va'oretz Chadosha? Because there'll be all sorts of good things happening in them, and so people will look at them as if it's a new world. They will say, well, this is a new world, and therefore we'll call it Shamayim Va'oretz Chadosha. But he brings a posik in the Radak from brought down in Ecclesiastes, Koheles, in Koheles, from Shlomo HaMelech, what he says over there, that ha'oretz li'elam ta'amui, that the earth will forever stand and never undergo any change. But he says that that's mashma, that the earth will always be that way, even after Tchias Hamezim. Therefore, we can't really say the earth's going to change in its mahus. Therefore, he learns that it's a way of talking. There won't be new Shemayim V'Aretz, but there'll be new inyanim in them, which will cause us to look at them in a different way. And therefore, we'll call it Shemayim V'Aretz Chadosha. But Yilu Rashi and others, they say it'll be mamish new heavens and earth altogether. However, the Eibishter says that those Shemayim V'Aretz, which I'm going to make, Asher Ani Oiseh, mashma, that there's going to be some new inyan that only the Eibishter can make, because otherwise, it's moving mi'atzmai that if things like in the heavens and the earth, if they're going to be changed, then only the maker of the heavens and earth can change them, or make them new, or renew them even, if we'll learn that pshat. And if this great alteration that's going to take place is as Anil said, the Eibishter is going to do it. It's going to be through him. And on that, we're going to ask the question: my nafkamina b'zeh. What sort of chiddush is it to tell me that the Eibishter is going to do it? L'chola pirushim b'zeh. It's moving that only the Eibishter can do that. And l'chola, that's a simple union that doesn't need to be taught. However, Shemayim V'Aretz are going to stand in front of me literally, and they will be presenting themselves before me permanently. In the same way, your descendants and your names, your names will stand in front of me. So one of the great Mephoshim over there in Yeshaya Novi, he says, what's the chiddush that your generations or your offspring will stand in front of me? Because I might have thought that at the time of the Geulah there's going to be such a tremendous, what you might say, upheaval. You have to use the expression in Yiddish, that's all kind of everything. I might have thought that there'll be another Golus, Rahmanin Islam, or there'll be another, what you might call, heavy payment in Jewish, in the Yidden for the whole Indian of the Geulah, and therefore it won't be the same generations. They might all be seriously damaged or almost wiped out, and it'll only be just a continuation, a different way of the Yidden. And therefore the Eibishter promises that despite all the upheavals that will occur, that your generations and your offspring will remain in front of me in a complete and what you might call ultimately undamaged way. Even though it appears in other Nevuos, there's going to be a whole Mahuma, and part of the Eden is going to go out of Jerusalem, part of it going to come back, and there's going to be a whole sort of series of upheavals. Yeshayahu Novi, being the Novi Ageulah, even this posik, according to their opinion, he promises that there won't be any lacking in the Jewish people, that Kain Yam Zarachem, in a renewed way and in a full way, what you might call undamaged and alienated by this tremendous upheaval which will occur. And the same with Shimachem, that your name, in other words, that the name that you made for yourself by the Eibishter for keeping mitzvahs particularly, and the tremendous permanent name which we see even by the Goyim, it's become a Dover Rogil. People say, the eternal people and all, they call Yidden, Yidden are a dogma of how a person or people have lived through all the changes of all the civilizations and all the Meshach Koladeras, all the big isms and shmisms and all the big civilizations and all the big conquering peoples that they've gone to do is, they've all completely been lost to history. Some of them completely, absolutely lost. Well, just a few archaeological remains which people still out of years there trying to put together to work out how it looked, etc. But you find in South America or these other places, different great so-called civilizations and so on that exist. And nonetheless, Yidden and Pul Hashem have always gone on, and even though they've been they're like children that have been exiled from their father's table. Nonetheless, we see that Pul Hashem, they've always been, so whenever he says, Vishimchem, or that name that you have is the great people and the eternal people, the carriers of the message of Hashem, etc., etc., all of that will remain. Quick to say, it'll go on, and you'll still be the center of the creation. Because then it'll be the Gilei Lakus in the world will be such that everybody will hail the Jewish people. They are the messengers, and they are the ones who brought it to us, and they are the ones who are now revealing it to us in the way that Shaykh Lakol Ho'ilam Kulei, particularly Melech HaMashiach. That'll be his tafki. So that's the union of that person. And since we say that, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, that's a sign that that's got to do with the union of Rosh Chodesh, with the union, and that's what's Mavur over there. In the previous chapter, what he brings over there, also in this Navur, right near the end, it's written the same thing, that every Shabbos in Rosh Chodesh, all the Goyim will come up to bow down to the Eivusha in Yerushalayim, etc., etc. So he brings the Mamish in these last Psukim at the end of Yeshaya Novi. What that means to say that Inyan of Shabbos Rosh Chodesh has got some shaykhs and mitis to the whole Inyan of the Gula Shleima, and to the Inyanim will be Be'esaha Hazman, that you have Yidden, you have Goyim coming up, Lishtachave Slavaya, Lefonai Nauma, Hashem, that they'll come to bow down in front of the Lefonai, so the Stovid Beis Hamikdash. It makes possible to keep sure they'll all come up to the Beis Hamikdash. The farm, that's got this whole posik shayat to the Giluim, how they're going to be Liosi. The Chodik Lahovin Masha Oma Hashomaim Yeh HaChadoshim. Chulu Asher Ani Oiseh. Meire, the Eibishter wants to make Shomayim Chadoshim. How do you say? Kablut Bekite. Make Ha'oretz Chadosha, Mamish Kipshute, or Kipirush Aradah. They say, wonderful. What is the pshat? Asher Ani Oiseh. What's the Chiddush Bezeh? Haloi Gam HaShomayim V'Oretz De'achshov. Even the Shomayim V'Oretz, how they are now, no matter what they'd be old, they'd be refurbished occasionally, or whatever they are, they're not Mamish Chadoshim like they will be then. But they were also Nivro Mi'elakus. They were created from the Eibishter. Ukamashikasu Bereshis Bor Elokim, that the Eibishter created everything at the beginning. Mahu Inyan Asher Ani Ose. What is the Inyan? What the Navi goes out of his way in the name of the Eibishter to say that this Shemayim V'Oretz, oh yes, of course, I'm going to make that. The old ones were also made by him. And it couldn't really be otherwise. We couldn't imagine what would be anybody else or any other Kohen making Shemayim V'Oretz. What's the diuk asher anio? What's the dinim? Mahu inyan hashamayim v'oretz doshim. What is the whole inyan of heavens and earth, newly made, new heavens and new earth? Asheheim oimdim lefonai, that they will be standing in front of the Eibishter. I mean, there must be some particular intention of those words. I mean, the Shemayim V'Oretz are always standing in front of the Eibishter. If he made them, then they're always present. Kaviyochel in his Hashgacha and his ruling over them, so they're always standing in front of him. What does it mean that these new ones are going to stand in front of him? Obvious that they'll be standing in front of him. What is the implication of that expression, that they will be standing in front of him? V'gam mahu inyan zarachem v'shim chem. Yeah, he said, what is the union of your, literally your offspring and your names? Yeah, Asher, She'omer, yeah, Alzev, the Kasher, Shamayim V'Ortz HaChadoshim, Yamoid, yeah, Chadoshim, Cain, Yamoid Zarachem, in a similar way to the Shamayim V'Ortz HaChadoshim, that they'll be standing in front of him, so will stand your offspring and your names. What does that add to the picture? What does it mean? What is the union of Zarachem and Shimchem? That they'll be standing in the same way, whatever that may mean in the Shemayim V'Ortz. They'll be standing in front of Hashem, whatever that may mean. Jam Zarachem V'Shimchem will also have that great milo or aspect that they'll be standing in front of Hashem. What is the Biyub is there? Remember, those are the questions, quite simple questions in the Pshat HaInyan, what the intelligent reader, anyway, when he reads them, reflects what do these things mean. It occurs to the attentive reader, anyway, what does it mean? Shamayim V'Ortz Chadoshim, what does it mean? Ani Oseh, and that they're going to be standing together with Zarachem and Shimchem. In order to understand all this, Chodik Lahachdim proceed and first of all make an introduction. Mashin is Bu'el, what is explained in earlier Maimonim in the Hemshech, the Bechinas Harotzoi the Neshomes Yesh Koyach HaYisoros Al Ze Milamayla Shebekol Boiker Oyer Ma'ir Neshomes Le'ahavo Es Hashem. Well, we have to hope so, Be'ez Hashem, that every morning, Kol Boiker Oyer, in other words, he doesn't just call Stam the Boiker, but he calls it the Boiker Oyer, the light of morning, the Lichtigkeit. In other words, that morning replaces the darkness. Immediately the darkness leaves and there comes the morning, then there's an awakening power from above. No'irim es hanishomes, they wake up the nishomes to all pop out of their shlof and jump up with tremendous enthusiasm, right? To say all we want is lahavoes Hashem, to love and be devoted to with tremendous brand to the Eibishter. That's called rotzoi. Yeah, that's the word rotzoi. Nowadays you have to also be Moisef. We want Moshiach now. Kol Chag, the Minyonet. Right? When he wakes up in the morning and he gets moon, he has to say, depending on how much of a mishchist you are, right, you got to say what you got to say. You got to say, Yechia Adinainu, Yechia Melech Moshiach. But, says the Rebbe, the basis of all those, I feel the Iyam from saying Yechia Adinainu, Miyad Baboiker, V'chulu. The basis of that is Ahavas Hashem. What is it, Pshat Ahavas Hashem? A mensch wants Gilel HaKus, he wants that the Rebbe should appear to us and should reveal himself to us, and we should be able to be Dovuk in him, or Al Chaponim, we should be able to go out and be Dovuk in him if he's not Mamish B'tachas like Gilel B'regazeh. And it all surrounds him, Arum D'Zolba Kuda, somebody that Emesa Ahavas Hashem, he B'der Mamela wants Moshiach. Now, B'der Mamela, that his rotzen is for Gilel HaKus. It will fulfill the hour. It will unite him with what he's so devoted to, that's Inyan von Elikus. And the first said the Rebbe, that's called the Inyan of Rotzoi. That Inyan von arousal of the neshama to go out of its limitations and to go upwards and to meet the Eibishter, as it were, or that is called Rotzoi. And he says that there's a inyan in that in the neshamas in general, and what arouses is that is a koyach hiseirus al zeh mil ma'ila. That the Eibishter wait for you to slap yourself around and give you a bit of rotzoi and say you want to go out, and he sends a special arousal, a special koyach milmaila downwards at certain chosen points. In other words, that sending down of that arousal is not the whole time. It's only, and therefore he says, for example, here, boiker oyer, at that moment. Let's put down and sit as a pill. And if you happen to be, I don't know if you guys are ever into that particular type of league, but if you're ever mamish away at the very crack of dawn, as they call it, when the first it begins to appear, the dawn, and what you might call the maybe after the Alois HaShachar, because at Alois HaShachar it's still rather dark and not easy to see, but at the what they call the Inyaf and Zricha, Zricha Sashemesh, then you see the amazing sort of waking up of the whole Bria. The whole Bria seems to get a whole new chayas. It seems to wake up with a new bren and all the the Balechayim and all the birds, everything comes out with a new frischkeit and a new teikef and a new bren and a new tikva toiva, a new good hopefulness and arousal. And, so in the neshamas of Yidden, there's also a that there's a feeling of wanting to go out and leave behind all the limitations and to be dovak in Hashem. At that moment, what's called boiker oyer. In other words, the boiker represents like a new start after a holdback, after a darkness, after the opposite of light. And therefore, the Etzeminya from boiker is connected with the word oyer. We call it boiker oyer. Like it's written in the pasuk by Achai Yosef when they were leaving at that time to go out. And Yosef sent after them to bring them back. At the end of Parsha Miketz, stored. And it's written Haboiker Oyer, as they state it, Haboiker Oyer. The morning brought light, and then they went out, they left and to go on their way. And it's brought down in the Sugi there on the Masechta Psochim. At the beginning of the Masechta Benagir to the famous usage of the expression of the sages at the beginning of Psochim, Oyer la'arba oso boit kimesa achometz la'oyer ha. Haneir on the night literally. Oyer la'arba also on the night of the 14th, and we are boidik the chomet. And so the Gemara starts with the whole thing. How could they use the word oyer for meaning the opposite? It means adequate going into the night. And the Gemara brings also to Rayas from the Pesukim that the word oyer refers to generally to the morning, because the morning is the inner of oyer mitzad teva hadvarim. So the Gemara reaches after a lot of pilpul b'dor, the Gemara reaches a conclusion. That's richtig. Sometimes we use the word oyer, what we call a euphemism. How do you call it? Lishna mail, you say. How do you call it? A nice way of saying, instead of saying it on the night of the 14th, they didn't want to start off all the word Laila, whenever they start off with the word oyer, and in other words, you could call the night also oyer, even though that's not its normal term. In the boiker, that's the normal term. The Ike Indian of boiker is this appearance of light. So there's a favushi to it. Why is it that boiker is Yidden oyer? Because in Pnimius, and how it is by Yidden, what Yidden are the Moki V'Shorish of the whole Bria, because Pnimius so in, and there's also such at the moment of the boiker, the Eibush sends down this tremendous Yishoirus to arouse the Neshamas to a Inifah Rotzhui, that as you want to go out from their Matthias altogether. And that's what we find. That's based on the famous expression we had it earlier in the Hemshah for those who learned in Parsha Vayichulu, Shemayim V'Oretz, etc. We had over there the famous usage of the pasuk in Yecheskel Hanovi at the beginning, when he talks about the Merkov Alien and the Malachim and so on. And he says you have a Chayos, referring to a certain type of angel, the Chayos, Rotzoivo Shoiv. They are, how do you call it, running outwards, and they are returning. Chayos Rotzoivo Shoiv. So Rashi brings out a whole bigger reader. Rashi says that the Rotzoi means that they go upwards and they pop their heads out, mi al rokiya she'al roisheim. That they literally jump up through the rokiya that's over their heads. It's put down earlier. It was a rokiya ke'in hakira chanoira al roisheim. So Rashi said every now and then they pop their heads up through that, and that's called Rotzoi. Umiyad nirtoim la'achureihem, immediately they retreat backwards into themselves. Mi'emus hashchina, all of a sudden they see the Shechina, and it's much higher and full of revelation. As they pop down again, as it were, the angels, they come down and they retreat downwards. That's a dinim for Rotzoi vo shoi. And those are like participial terms from the word larutz, which means to run, Rotzoi, and shoi from the word to return, shul le'altziko. A shoi is like a continuous participle. Rotzoi and shoi, they're always going up and coming back down again. So there was in the neshamas, there's a rotzoi. All neshamas want to go up and go out to the Eibishter, and that's a be'emes, that's a koyrech of Yisraelus no mile. That's started off in the neshama. It's aroused by a special gilui no mile. In other words, that Aleph, that's because Kach Reita HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what he wants, that they should be in his Matzah. And Zweiten says it's very difficult for the Mensch, being as he is Lamata in Olam Hazeh and in a Guf Gashmi and in a Matzah Gashmi and the whole, that he should be able to be in a Matzah of going out and leaving everything behind and going out and looking only for the Eivishter, even from running and intensity of Hamshocha. Therefore there has to be a special koyach, milmayo, like a huge magnetic force comes down and arouses the neshama. And all the neshamas are aroused and they want to go upwards into that koyach, what they feel, albeit local kakbagila, but they feel this tremendous awakening and longing to go into the union of Elokus. And that is every boika oyer, or even on other occasions. It occurs, the much it occurs on Shabbos, when it gets to Shabbos, manim miyuchodim to the union from Rotzoi. The Ikizman, however, is in Dafki in the union from boika oyer, and that is an arousal of the nishomes to go out in the form of Rotzoi. Now the union from Shoiv, we'll talk about that a little bit further as we go along. The union from Shoiv is a return. In other words, that the continuous going outwards and on the part of the neshama is called continuous because after it goes out, and just like the angels above, they go up to her, but then they get a new gil of a much higher union, and they realize that they have to come back down, they have to retreat, as it were, Shoiv. And similarly, the neshama wants to go up, but then there's another power which reveals itself in the neshama, but that helps the neshama to appreciate that really it needs to go back. It needs to go back down, because that gufa is the kavona, ho'elyoina, that the Eivishter wants it, the neshama should be dafki b'lamata, b'teicho eilam, and it should be makayim retzoinoi, and other of it's looking for Elokus, it'll find that Elokus dafki lamata, b'teicho eilam, and that's the union of Shoy. Well, we're going to see in a minute that that's also a koyach miyuchad. In other words, once you get up so high that you should be able to come down and just overlook that immense, how do you call it, elevation that you gained, albeit not purely with your own koyach, but we're soon going to see also with your own koyach, and then you got to come back down again. That's another special form of Gilei Elokus that helps you to come down. The whole Rotzoi V'Shoiv is really the Koyach Elyon. It's a Koyach Elyon which brings you out, and it's a Koyach Elyon which gives you the power to go back. That's the stam meaning for Rotzoi V'Shoiv. At this particular moment, we're talking about this Indian of the Rotzoi. So he says, Omnam Zehu B'Bchinas Yisraelus Lavod. That whole Indian that you go out in morning or on other special moments, of all year's moments, with this tremendous desire to get out of the Kli and out of the limitations, and dafki to go up into Elokus, he said that's only a Yisraelus. That's only an awakening or an arousal, which comes mil maila. Avo amitius harotzoi hu b'koyach atzmoi davka. This is a famous chiddush. This is one of the reasons we chose to learn this Maimon. Just like a turn in the whole Indian of a few drushim that have been here in Samech Vav, but they go in that Indian of the Seirus Milmaila, they deal with great detail about that. And then the Rebbe reaches the conclusion, the previous Maimon, and one of the other previous Maimonim, that the whole purpose of our coming down here into this world is Dafka, even though the mensch is limited, and he's got all the limitations and all the inyanim of, and then Hashem is in a tremendous fall into this world. With an Shabbat, he's under goof and all the inyanim of this world, etc. You name it, the world's got it, and then Shabbat has got it, etc. etc. Dafka, in that matzav, there has to be what we call Aveda B'koyach Atzmoi. That the mensch is going to do it with his own koyach. He's got to somehow or another find the way to go out in the rotzoi and to make an desire to get out of this whole, what you might call, incarceration that he is in the goof here, Ramata, and in the world, what's a rotzoi, and then when he gets to the rotzoi, he says, oh, this is great, let's just stay up here and have nothing more to do with anything. Then he's got to have a special koyach to come back down, and that's got to be the koyach atzmai dafki. Dafki, he has to do that. In other words, not the nefesh elokis and not the nefesh bahomiyas, but both of them pull in completely opposite. The nefesh elokis is rotzig isn't right, let's have rotzig, here we go. No, the mensch himself is what we call the mensch himself is like this man in between the two. This is Odom. Like the Alter Rebbe calls him in Perek Yud in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, Kasher, ha'odom magbiras nafshe elokis al nafshe haba homiyas. Well, for now we see that the Odom is not the nefesh elokis, not the nefesh haba homiyas. There's like a mensch in the middle. That's the Odom. That's the one that's got to do the work. In other words, he's got to make a bechira, and he's got to make a decision. He's got to hakarayin. Yeah, and then if he does, he'll have tremendous help. I mean, there's not about the Avis is waiting to help him. We'll help him. Built Shum Sofi. And even when he wants to come back down again, well, that's a much more, in a way, bigger Mesiras Nefesh in a way. The Avis says, don't worry, I'll help you and I'll be with you, etc., etc. But in the middle, as they call in Yiddish, in Pintlerein, mamish, in this little point in the middle, waiting for you, says David. It's got to be Dafki B'koyach Atzmach. You have to do it with that little sort of Koyach HaBechira and that little Odom that you are there. And you got your nefesh elokis to tell you all the good things, to give you all the inspiration, all the power to do it, etc., etc. And you got to be careful of the nefesh bahomiyas, because he'll slap you and pull you and persuade you, all sorts of masalach and all sorts of inyanim. They'll say, ooh, you talk about teva ha'ilam, and who knows what he'll talk about. Yeah, and he'll say that you're just a schlepper, and say, oh, yes, I'm just a schlepper. And they'll say, weiter. All sorts of inyanim, and over in the middle this little koyach atzmi, this little own power that you have. What's left of it? I mean, Nefesh Elokis is trying tremendously hard. Nefesh Abami is just making a huge, what you might call mud pie out of me, just pulling me down and turning me into chesed was, and all the other inyanim. And then you got the whole world, you got all the sodas and the daigers, and chesed was. Oh yes, we want you, that little bit of you that's in the middle there. That's called you, Odom. That's called you. Oh, that's what we're waiting for. And you have to do that on your own. And that prat right there in the middle with all these amazing powers around, you are on your own. That's little you, and you've got to do it. That's what they're going to Samech Vav. We're going to learn one of the really big trumpet mimers here. If we get that far before Pesach. And you're going to see that the Rebbe says that he has to teach you all these things, whole great sefer here. Oh, he comes to tell you why you have to do it yourself, why they're so important. In other words, in order to realize just what you can do yourself and why it's important, you got to learn all of it. Yeah. What kind is it? So you might say, well, what do I need all this for? Just tell me and I'll try to do it. This is good. Pick the sefer. How do they say? In Yiddish, a nechtika talk, it's a yesterday's day, And say, thank you very much. You go your way, and I said, oh, you got all this. All these unbelievable things that are going on. Now, where am I? I'm reading Shalom, give a cook. The whole world, the ganze Shemayim words, the ganze inyanim and thousands of different rotzim and sheim. I got to get something done. I got to get cracking. I can't possibly just leave it like that. That's the whole thing, and the whole thing is written to tell us that Amitis Harotzoi He B'Koach Atzmi Davkeh. but you got to go out, and you got to run outwards and want to go higher on your own. So how do you do that? Through tremendous effort, bizbonin. How do you say it? It's as simple as all. You got to come through reflection in Elokus to come to Ava. Rotzer is Ava. Oh, but that's how the David gives you. He gives you this like big magnet. You feel it's Ava. Well, that's not enough. It'll be written in a few lines, but that goes away quick. You get these big Yisraelis, a few hours later, it's gone. But if you do it yourself, then it lasts. No. And that's the famous Maimon, the famous Maimon in Likutei Torah, Adam Ki Yaakov, in Parsha Vayikra. That's the famous Maimon, whatever it says, exactly that, but the whole thing. Adam refers to the Eivishter, that's the Adam Shalachisi, Ki Yakriv, that he will bring you close. Mikem Korban Hashem, the Korban Hashem is going to come from you. In the Bosei Lagani, so there was Mikem, was it Mikem? Should be written, Adam Mikem Ki Yakriv. So he says, no, Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem. When the Eivishter will try to bring you close, it's got to come from you. In other words, that's a whole basic principle. Same thing as what's written here, but in a whole different nusa. I once heard a man say from Gora Choshev Yid, what he told me that he heard from a person who was connected with this family. So it meant he must know what he was talking about. But there was once the Rebbe Rashab was once on one of these inverted commas vacations that he went. He went quite often, the Rebbe Rashab, on these vacations, and he went to this place which was not all that totally far from Lubavitch. It was in some big Russian country place where the air was very pure and was very refreshing, very good to bring people back to their koiches, so on and so forth. So the Rebbe was out there, and one day he was sitting on the balcony, taking air that was coming in. The Rebbe was saying Tilim, a little boy from one of the Yiddish boy from one of the Chadorim in that town, the only Cheder that was in that town, he walked by, he stopped and he saw this amazing person sitting on the, you saw the Rashab, even from distance, they say it just stopped you. And he saw him sitting on the balcony, so he stood and looked up. So the Rebbe looked down, and the Rebbe said, what's your name or something? So he called up his name, and the Rebbe said, why don't you come up and I'll faher you, and what you learn in the Cheder, come up. So anyway, there was this amazing kesher that grew up between this boy and the Rebbe Rashab. And so the parents, they heard that the Rebbe had called up their boy, and they heard him, and so they came, and they said, we need, he's becoming bar mitzvah soon, he's already not far from bar mitzvah, we need, a lot of help, they should be an Elach Yid, and we want him to be a Chassidish Yid, and the way it should be, and this and that. So the Rebbe gave them a blessing and everything, he gave them some eitas, and so then they said, he's going to be bar mitzvah, what should he do when he's bar mitzvah? So the Rebbe said he should say a Maimon Chassidus Baal Peh, he should learn a bit of Chassidus Baal Peh. And then the Rebbe said to them that we should learn that Maimon from Yikov, from the Alter Rebbe, Adam Ki Achriv Mikem. We should say the first part of that Maimon, Baal Peh, not the Biur, because that's very complicated, but just the actual Maimon, Kamoshehu in the Likutei Torah. It's not all that terrible, and you actually read it to him. It's not that terrible.
You have it in English.
Yeah, you have it in English now? So, that's about it. It's, so the Rebbe Rashab said he recommends that the boy should say that at the bar mitzvah. So, if you can learn it, Baal Peh. So the parents said, what's the reading? Time on my way, I'll get that Maimah, hundreds of my what's to get that Maimah? So the Rebbe said, because that Maimah is masbir, that in order to be close to the Eivishter, in order to be emeshayat to Elokus, to be emeshayat Elokid, that's to come from you. You've got to do it. Yeah, you've got to do it, and you've got to be b'koyach atzmecha an Elokid. That's what I said. You have to be with your own power, a Jew the way it's supposed to be. And so that's the secret of becoming bar mitzvah. So you become bar mitzvah, you got to realize that. To these people. So the boy learned that, and they say he became later on a big chassid, and we had a whole family. children, Emerson City, and the whole thing. That's what I heard there, particular matter. It's basically the same principle. Odom ki yakriv, the Abish is going to give you a power to bring you near. He's going to let forward a power to draw you up. But mikem, it's going to come from you. Korban chem, the coming close is going to come from you. Mina bahema, mina tain, it's going to come from your nefesh haba. How many years you've got to work on it, and you've got to change him in a way that will make it possible for you to become really close. That's Nekuda Sayin. Alidei hayigiv is bonanes, v'lov elidei avo. And he said, you come to love the Eibishter. So let me see you once again the scene of an avo. Like we said before, avo is a tremendous thing. When there's avo, a kiru, then you have chayes in your brain and you want to get things. When you get things done, you see that the whole bria is dafki mitzad kiru, mitzad all creatures in this world. If they feel that they're korev to something, then they have chayes. They want to get near. They want to feel that they're valued by some other power, something else. Wherever this what we call avo, then there's a chayes. Somebody feels. To put it in a very simple way, if he feels that he's loved or he feels that he's appreciated or whatever the word may be, then he gets a tremendous chayes, and in the same way, then he gives what's called feedback. He gives back that whole hisoyer. When all the nivroim and all, particularly the nishomah, know that the Eibishter is arousing them to come to him, then it gives them a chayes. They want to be near. And they do what they want to be near. They draw everything with them, and that's what's called the Seid Ha'ava. That's a dinner good. The fair, you have to, we stated, you have to is, in the word, you have to is Begematria base pomim oyer. I'm not sure, but I think so. You have to is base pomim oyer. In other words, there's two, Ava means two lights. There's a light milmaila and there's a light milmata, and the two lights meet together and they make this tremendous thing. I said, Ubchinas Ava Rabu. Now, Ava Rabu is not Stam Ava. Now, Ava Rabu means unlimited Ava, but that's the Ava which Be'ika comes milmaila. In other words, unlimited Ava. Ubchinas Ava Rabu Hagam Shubo milmaila. Even though you get that milmaila, you can't really reach Ava Rabo on your own. You can't really reach Ava Rabo on your own. That's what we saw the other night in the sheer clothing. That was the whole Indian of Shahaha Nikve Aleim Kagigis. The Alter Rebbe said that was the gili of this Ava Rabo. But over there it came first off. Mamish milmaila. So the Rebbe said, Ein Lachanami, that comes milmaila. But that was at that moment. He said, however, after that, after Matan Torah, Zehu Gam Kein Alidei Hakdomas Ho Avoida Mikoach Atzmei Davka. He said that coming of Ava Rabba Begirui, unlimited Ava, and how do you call it, hold back Ava, Ava which is it sweeps the mensch into it completely with all of his koiches. That comes also milmala, but dafke when you have put in your amount that you can, dafke alidei, the proceeding of your avodah koyach atzmacha dafke. Hein ba'avodah pnimius the nefesh elokis. He said both in your work through your nefesh elokis on its own. Avodah pnimius means the inner avodah of the nefesh elokis. In other words, in yonim which are shayach to the nefesh elokis in its own pnimius. V'hein ba'avodas on nefesh elokis levarer letakinus on nefesh habahomi. He said also using your nefesh elokis to come down and give over messages to your nefesh habahomi. Well, that's the famous big trick that you got to use your nefesh elokis to talk to your nefesh habahomi. Your nefesh elokis can't talk to your nefesh habahomi directly because they don't talk the same language. They wouldn't understand what the heck. Over through the what we call the nefesh hasiklis, but that's this hodom part of it. That you got to draw down and translate in yourself all sorts of inyonim would be able to go over to the nefesh Bahomias, and eventually you make a kesher between him and the Nefesh Elokis. He said, that's what you've got to do. In other words, you've got to use your Nefesh Elokis as much as you can. Then you've got to use your Nefesh Elokis to talk to the Nefesh Bahomias. Then, having done that, you can reach, having brought the Nefesh Bahomias up and made him also interested, at least, in coming close to the Eibishter. Then you can have what's called Ava Rabba. Then there's no, as it were, there's no longer any opposing force, as you might say. And therefore the Ava Rabba can come down and just sweep you in, and you can become completely involved in Avasa Shem. That's even Ava Rabba. So even though it comes from Mala, you couldn't really reach that on your own. But if the Eibishter sees that you've done everything you could, then he gives you that Ava Rabba, albeit as a Multana Milmara, but he only gives it to somebody who worked hard for it. Right? And that's what the Gemara says, that you don't give a matana only to somebody that he's done you a nachas ruach. You don't just walk up on the street to any old Chaim Yankele and give him a matana. You give a matana to somebody that's done you a nachas ruach, and you feel a certain pleasure in him, and therefore you give him a matana. That Ava Rabba comes mil Maila, but it's only when you've done everything you could. It's bedugma to the Inif and Shavuos. It comes after the Sheva Shavuos of the Sviras Ha'ima. What the aim is, the Nefesh HaBahamiyas, and Sviras Ha'ima is the lighting up and the illumination of the Nefesh HaBahamiyas. And then the Eibishter gives us this unbelievable matana mil Maila, doesn't he, my Daniel Shema? Oh, yes, he does. And particularly for those who use their artistic gifts to putting in an artistic thrust at the Nefesh HaBahamiyas, and that's even better. Therefore, he says, Bavi Nefesh HaBara Taknas and Nefesh HaBahamiyas, the Misha Torach B'erev Shabbos Yoichel B'Shabbos. Gemara Masechta Veda Zorah, right near the beginning. Matter of fact, it comes to the answer to that. We mentioned the other night. The Gemara mentions in Veda Zorah also about Kof Aleim HaKigigis over the Goyim Levatanas. He didn't force us into it. So they would say, well, a little bit I did give you. Did you do anything? And after that, a bit of Hishtalsha saying, the Gemara gets onto this one, that Misha Torach B'erev Shabbos Yechol B'Shabbos. That Shabbos is a day where you can't do anything anymore. You can't prepare yourself what to eat. And therefore, if you prepare on Erev Shabbos, then you have what to eat on Shabbos. You can't cook or do anything almost on Shabbos, except maybe you can just eat a piece of bread or if you got it. Or you maybe eat a banana or something. But if you haven't prepared, you can't. You don't know what to eat. So what does that mean? Misha Torach, but Erev Shabbos, he worked hard at the beginning and the lead up. Then on Shabbos he gets everything, as it were. The Eibishter helps him and sees that he's got everything he needs. In the same way, if you put in your effort, then the Eibishter will give you the Inif and Ava Rabba. Maybe that's a remez to the fact that the Inif and Shabbos is referring to Shabbos and Manucha L'Chayei Lamim, that's referring to the Inif and Moshiach. And if you're Torach B'erev Shabbos, you work hard, then you get the Gilui Elokus Bisman HaMoshiach, when you're able to be the time the Inif and Ava Rabba. We see here an amazing principle that emes things come no maila, but they only come no maila to touch off your own work, both in your going out and in your coming back. At this particular point we talk about the going out. What the going out is ava, is that Indian is only produced in you in its shleimus, but that's the unlimited ava rabba. If you did what you could within your own powers to do what you are able to do, even though it may not be ava rabba, but you do your own work with your Nefesh Elokis, and particularly your Nefesh Elokis over your Nefesh HaBahamiyah, then you get this unbelievable gift of ava rabba no maila. So I can see that everybody is saying, well, we just came from a long Shabbos and we're all struggling around, we're all sort of hucking ourselves around after a long Shabbos and this. What do you want with all this ava rabba business? And halavai, we just be able to breathe and be able to carry on. What can I help? You got to realize that you always have to be able to give yourself a emes of shakel. That you haven't seen it considers this, that you can be able to shake things off. There's a Moshe of the Zohar Kodesh. You know, the Zohar Kodesh says if how do you call a rooster or a hen gets into dust, it gets all covered, you can almost not recognize it from the dust. It stands up and then it goes, all the feathers run like that, all the dust just flies away. You got a clean little tune. Bathe itself, didn't stand in floods of rain or something. All the people just go, and then all the dust is gone. It's as clean as you want. So that's easy for tshuva. Tshuva kariga chada, v'shaita chada. You have to give yourself a man, and all the dust flies away, and there you are, ready for action. For action, pnimi, even for ava rabba, l'mayla mendida v'hagdabara. So that seems to be going a little bit difficult. So then we'll just read another couple of lines, and then we'll leave it at that for this evening. He says that Rebbe Tachlis Avodah, what is the ultimate point of the whole Avodah, meaning your Avodah, what you've got to do on your own? Very fascinating. You've got to be in a matzah for Rotzev V'shoy. You've got to be all the time going out, but coming back. And every time you go up on a slightly higher level. When you come back down with more perfection. He said, Vahaino, yeah. What does that mean? We see that you've got to be Rotzev V'shoy. What does that mean? That you've got to have a brand. You've got to have what's called, in modern Hebrew they say, it really bothers you. You want to be close to it. And then when you get closer, now Chris says, wait a minute, but I really want you to, and you go down with a tremendous, in other words, that you are, I mentioned what you're involved. First of all, you want Elikus, mamish, to be closed. You want to have gishmak in Elikus, and then you're able to overlook your own gishmak and realize what you really got to be doing. But if you didn't have the gishmak from the beginning, you don't really care one way or the other. In other words, that the Rotza is very important, even though it's slightly self-interested, the truth is. But it's very important to get you off the ground. So the Rebbe says, Vahainu, what does that mean? That you've got to be Barotze V'shoiv? He said, L'yachar ha-tefillah b'seiras avavir. First of all, he said, you've got to have a davening with an arousal of avavir. Then you'll be able to do Torah mitzvahs the whole day. So what does that mean? If I didn't have a service half a year, I'd only be able to 2/3 of the day or half of the day. No, if I daven with the service half a year, I'll be able to do the whole day. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't do Torah mitzvahs the second half of the day or something. But it's already not that, so how they call it, it's a little bit cultural option. Over it should be Torah mitzvahs with emes of brand. Mamish with a desire to carry out the Eibishter's will and to really change the world and really make a Dira Levi's Bara B'Tachtoinim. You've got to have a davening which brings you to Avaviyir. And then afterwards you'll have the Inyan from Shoiv, Kiyum HaTorah Mitzvahs, is the Shoiv, but it'll be Al Kolayim. It will last the whole day, and it will be what it will see as we go along with our desire to make a Dira Levi's Bara B'Tachtoinim. Just like the Rotza has to be dafki with your own power, he said that's also in the koyach atzmei. You've got to come back down. Not you being forced down. You don't need brera that you got to go down. The neshama wanting as it does so much to go out, to be parted from all the shtusim in this world, with the same power, with more. It wants to come down and carry out the Torah mitzvahs of the Eibishter in the world. Mamela said that Rebbe, that's the whole Inyan. You got to be continuously in a state of Rotzev V'shoiv, and this is the Tachlis. That's the ultimate point of it. If you don't get involved in that, then it's not really Avodah. It's got to be a Tefillah b'Seiras Avavir. That's called Rotzev. Therefore, I have to repeat again, you must realize that in this time of you're in yeshiva and Moshe is coming in a minute, so this is the last minutes, to chaparine, but you must make sure that the davening is proper. You must be sure that the davening is supposed to be a brain. It's a pele actually. Some of these young fellas, they finish Shemoneh Esrei in about 2 seconds. How they do it, we just make like it. How they do it so quick? I mean, are they saying it in English? Even in English, I wouldn't be able to read it that quick. I wouldn't be able to read that quick. I just jumped out. Yeah, and Rosh Chodesh. I mean, you can't tell me that they say the whole Shemoneh Esrei Daled Pratim. In David, they finish, I'm still holding in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei. They're already. I can't understand what goes on around here. These guys always get some patent. But they say the whole Shemoneh Esrei with all the beauty and all the simple shot of the words in Mamish in half the time that a normal human being would be able to say it. I don't know how it works. But I mean, you see what the Rebbe said? The Rebbe said it's got to be a tefillah b'av, it's be here, it's got to awaken a bit. So it's got to take a few minutes or something. You can't just when you turn that finish it. Here we are. Oh, shall we finish today? That'll be quick. Oh, this was bad. I just first don't understand that. I don't like to say anything to anybody. I feel sometimes embarrassed. I'm holding up here, they're all sitting around waiting for him to finish Shemoneh Esrei, and I'm raising as quick as I can to say the Shemoneh Esrei. I think they're all standing around saying, what's this old Gradle mirror? He's holding it up, what's he doing? We're all anxious to say Kaddish and get moving. I mean, what did they say? How did they do it? It was rushing, to finish. And if they beat me, and some of them beat me half time, I'm in the middle of Shemoneh Esrei, they're already finished. I'm like, what's the patent? So it's very interesting. We're going to see in this minor as a whole. Vedika minor is one of the reasons I chose. It leads into something very, very profound. But we're going to see going to get a bit of a glance here. Well, it's just simple bread and butter once upon a time. But it's considered davening. It should be Seder, Savir, it was something. Then I don't know. You read the song, but
is he going to explain? Is he going to explain the shuv part?
No, he's going to explain it tomorrow.
Yeah.
The shuv part of it is come back down and do the Torah mitzvah stuff in the world. Stuff to be inside the world. Be kind of the Torah mitzvah. Rotzah says want to go out altogether, out of the world. Understand? The union from Rotzah is only the union of Elikus, being close to it.
It's not yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily mean the whole union from Kiyam Torah mitzvahs. It just means you have to mean from Elikus mitzvah. And you got to want that. If you don't want that, then you don't really later have the cushion Torah mitzvahs. Got that here?
Is it like somebody who just wants to meditate the whole day?
Yeah. Somebody wants to be close and near to the Eibishter. And he might even do mitzvahs because maybe but the whole purpose is to do mitzvahs because that's what's in Hashem, and to want to make down here a place that you'll find Him. You understand? Not by going away from Him. Good. Right, so we'll hold that for this evening, and because I didn't mean those marks in a bad way. I'm not poking fun at anybody. But, just. You say to wake up a little bit. I mean myself as well.
We learn in halacha that just coming to tefillah with the desire to just come to tefillah to pray to Hashem is enough.
Maybe.
Yeah.